Yes, hello everyone and welcome to all our West Australian football fans to another edition of Around the WAFL. And believe you me when I say this week is absolutely stacked. Round 14, 5 massive games and the WAFLW Grand Final. We're going to preview them all for you here today on your go-to WAFL podcast in 2024. And it's available on YouTube and where you get your podcasts. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for this one. It's a massive weekend of football. Paul Persick with you in the studio. Alongside me, filling in this week, David Lindsay. Dave, would it be fair to say that this week is a mega weekend in football?
It certainly is, and it's a critical time of the season, isn't it? We've just gone past the midway point, so the ladder's starting to sort itself out a little bit, and there's some teams that could really do with a win this week.
Oh, no doubt about that. 5 massive games, all with finals ramifications, and also, Dave, the WAFLW Grand Final this Sunday afternoon at Pentanet Stadium. It's set to be another ripper between the Sharks and the Tigers.
Yeah, we're back again, East Fremantle and Claremont, 3 years in a row, so it'll be fascinating to see how this one plays out. The previous two have gone against the way that was expected, with the dominant team during the season going down in the Grand Final, so yeah, let's wait and see what happens on Sunday.
No doubt about that. We'll preview that game a little bit later on here on Around the WAFL, but first, here's how you can win big.
Punt from 50, win. Little too into the game, win. Too cocky, almost a win. Risking it all for the glory, win. It's win-win at the WAFL. Great footy, food and entertainment. Find out more at waffle.com.au.
Yes, win-win at the WAFL, and no doubt East Perth, they've been getting a few big win-wins because they are currently sitting in second place on the ladder, and they head to a big showdown with their co-tenant Subiaco at Sullivan Logistics Stadium this Saturday afternoon. What a crucial game it is with Subiaco on the rebound following their win over Peel Thunder, and East Perth, they almost threw it away against South Fremantle but got the 4 points in the end. One of their key players, 10 tackles in that game, provided a great role for the Royals midfield. Christian Ameduri, he's good enough to join us here on Around the WAFL. Christian, good morning to you, mate. A big game coming up this weekend.
Good morning, guys. Yeah, massive game coming up for the footy club this week. So, yeah, keen for this weekend and ready to go.
Let's go back just quickly to the game against South Fremantle. Of course, 5 goals ahead, almost let the game slip away. Well, what did it all come down to? Did you take your foot off the gas, or was South Fremantle really starting to fight the way in which it forced you to change how you played that last quarter?
Yeah, it was obviously for 3 quarters we were really good, we thought, and to be 5 or 6 goals ahead and sort of let that lead slip was very disappointing. And credit to South Freo because they actually really put the pressure on us, and they took away the sort of the way that we wanted to play, and they defended it really well. But we also let it happen, and for 3 quarters we moved the ball really well, and in that last quarter we sort of just went back into our shells, and probably the contest and pressure dropped off a little bit as well, which didn't help. So that was disappointing, but luckily, got the 4 points. So we'll look at the positives there.
Christian, you spoke about your ball movement there. I really enjoyed the entries into the forward 50. Early in the game, you're obviously well aware South Fremantle defenders like to sag off and wait for that long high kick to come in, but midfielders were spotting up the kicks to the leading forwards, and then it seemed to change once South had adjusted their defence as well. Does that come from coaching, or does that come from the players out on the ground?
Obviously South Freo, they like to drop off and try and intercept mark their defenders. They have a few really good players that are really good at it. So, that was something that we scouted, and we planned for that. So to go in and be able to execute, sort of lowering the eyes and hitting those forwards actually leading up was really pleasing, because the last couple of weeks we probably haven't been doing that too well. So that was pleasing. And then, in that last quarter, we sort of went away from it, and our entries were pretty poor, and we were blazing away a little bit. So, definitely something we scouted, and it was good that we could actually implement that plan and execute it. So for 3 quarters, really good, but obviously that last quarter was a bit disappointing.
Is that sort of plan that you're looking to implement against Subiaco this Saturday? Because obviously they're on the rebound, their midfield is starting to fire up, their ball movement is starting to become a lot more effective. Would that be that plan that you mentioned against that game against South Fremantle? Would that be implemented again against the Lions?
Yeah, well, Subi, they actually defend really well one-on-one as well. So that'll be something we'll look at throughout the week and we'll chat about with the coaches and the group. So I'm not sure what sort of plan we'll go in with just yet, but they're starting to play some really good footy. They knocked off Peel, top of the ladder, so and they have a really strong midfield, which they'll keep us accountable. So I'm not sure what sort of plan we'll go in with just yet, but we'll be ready for it, that's for sure.
Christian, we always talk about it being the battle of the co-tenants down there at Sullivan Logistics Stadium. Is there anything extra? Do you guys see the other club much when you're down there at Leederville Oval, or is it just something that the media like to talk about?
We see them on sort of Monday and Thursday nights. We have to all sort of share the ground, and we get half the night each on there. So we see them a little bit, but it's I think the media like to hype it up a little bit, but I suppose there's always a little bit of extra spice. We're both trying to prove that it's our home ground. So I suppose it provides a little bit of extra spice, but nothing too much. I wouldn't have thought. Right? They're a good team, and they've been the benchmark for a long time. We're trying to get to that spot where they were for a long time. So it's you got to get yourself up and about for a good team like Subi, that's for sure.
No doubt the boys will be up and about for that big game against the Lions on Saturday. It should be a beauty. Christian, we really appreciate your time here on Around the WAFL. Go get him against the Lions. All the best.
Thanks, boys. Thanks for having me. That
was Christian Ameduri from East Perth joining us here on Around the WAFL. That's going to be a huge game, and it does get a lot of hype, but I think this one, it can be worth the hype because Subiaco, they're on the rebound. They can still make the 5. East Perth, they're still threatening for top spot on the ladder. So there is stakes involved in this game.
Oh, definitely. And we've seen how close this season is. And one slip up, it can cost you a couple of spots on the ladder. And Subiaco, if they could win this week, then they would have done what Claremont recently did, beat the top 2 teams in consecutive weeks, which we've seen what's happened to Claremont since they've done that. They've gone on a bit of a run and now they're really contending, and I think it's a chance for Subiaco to do the same. They'll be putting themselves back in the mix for the 5 if they can knock off the Royals this week.
Should be a great game, that one. No doubt about it. It'll be a beauty. Subiaco and East Perth on Saturday. Coming up, we'll have all 5 games to preview as part of Round 14 in the WAFL, but first you can check out some great merch here. Introducing the WAFL Merch Shop, your ultimate destination for all things WAFL. From jerseys to scarves to caps, show your support for the WAFL in style. Grab exclusive merchandise now and gear up to cheer louder than ever before. Visit shop.wafl.com.au today and let your passion shine. Yes, some great merch. Shop.wafl.com.au. Get yours today. They are selling like hotcakes with maple syrup. Make no mistake about that. Let's now go to the first of the games for round 14, a critical round this one. We go now to the WAFL Derby, if you will, the alignment derby, so to speak. Peel Thunder and the West Coast Eagles at 12:30 at Lane Group Stadium in Mandurah. An easy win's the only option for Peel after they coughed it up against Subiaco at home. They must win, but against a West Coast side that sensed a little bit of urgency against Swan Districts, they remained in touch, and I reckon West Coast can give them a little bit of a fright.
Well, they certainly put their best foot forward, and I know this game would mean a lot more for the Eagles side to have a win against Peel, considering it is the alignment derby, as you say. I think you'd expect Peel will bounce back pretty strongly, and they won't want to be dropping 2 games to teams outside the 5 pretty quickly. As we just said, it sort of changes your season pretty quickly. The ladder can change on you in a moment of a week or 2 with a couple of losses like that. So I think you'll expect that the Thunder will look to bounce back very strongly.
Well, the last 4 games, Peel Thunder have absolutely walloped West Coast by more than 7 goals on each occasion. Case in point, round 4 of this year, 18-15 to 7-13 at Optus Stadium. And when you're looking at the team stats in comparison to the sides, Peel Thunder 22 more points compared to the West Coast Eagles, 86 to 64. They've out-tackled the Eagles on average, out-marked the Eagles on average, and it's because they got more potency in that midfield and up in that forward line, and they've also got more depth as well. They've got greater continuity in their best 22.
They do, and it's been a really settled lineup, as you sort of suggest there, that they've got a lot of talent and that they don't tend to have to mix their team up too much. The Fremantle side's been fairly settled, which means that the players filtering back into Peel are the same sort of players most weeks, whereas the Eagles lineup has been changing over the course of a number of seasons now, so that continuity hasn't been there for them. So the Thunder players tend to know the game style a little bit better and perhaps know each other and the way they move and can sort of combine with each other a lot better than what the Eagles players do. So again, I think that's a massive bonus for Peel, and this game will depend a lot on the selections when it comes to AFL selections later in the week. Once we get a look at that, then we'll see what the Peel and Eagles lineups look at WAFL level as well. But Peel lineup, player for player, looks a lot stronger.
Absolutely, and they've got a good attacking style of football. We usually see those teams kicking like 14, 15 goals. They were held to 9 against Subiaco, but also the Eagles have that same style as well. They kicked 12 goals and only lost by 24 points, and you have the likes of Clay, Hall, True, Jack Williams, who kicked 4 against the Swans, and also Cohen Livingston, who I said on Tuesday, can really improve his follow-up in the ruck, and he's got what it takes to do so. So I expect this one to be all-out attack on Saturday. Should be an absolute beauty. Question is, who wins? Who's your tip?
I think Peel will win fairly comfortably. It wouldn't surprise me if the margin gets out to another 7 or 8 goal sort of margin there. I think Peel will want to respond strongly after the disappointing game last week, and I don't think the Eagles will be able to go with them.
Yeah, Peel for me as well. I reckon they'll get off to a good start. They'll force the Eagles to play catch-up, and they'll just be too strong in the end. Their depth up forward as well is also potent. Wilson needs to lift, and Tregenza needs to lift as well. They weren't as effective against Subiaco last week, but they certainly will be against the West Coast Eagles. That one is the first game of round 14 from 12:30 at Lane Group Stadium, the Thunder and the Eagles. Let's go to this next one, and this one's live on Channel 7 at 2:10. It should be an absolute spicy one out there. Claremont and South Fremantle, danger game for both sides at Revo Fitness Stadium. What a contest this shall be.
Yeah, look, the first one was a cracker. It was a 1-point ball game in the end. South kicked, I think, the first 6 goals of the game and then only managed another 3 for the rest of the game. And Claremont came really strongly in the last quarter but couldn't find the major openings.
1 goal 8 in the last quarter, yeah.
So I think the games between these two sides are normally very tight games. The margins have regularly been under 2 goals. Never many goals kicked between the two sides. Normally around about 9 or 10 goals is enough to win. So I'd be expecting this one to go right down the wire again.
Absolutely. They've had a couple of great clashes as well. Of course, this being the NAIDOC round for all the WAFL clubs. So you'll see all the teams. We've almost forgot to mention the NAIDOC round in their NAIDOC Guernseys as well. All the 10 WAFL clubs, which is going to be great. They met last year in the NAIDOC round at Fremantle Oval. Bailey Rogers kicked the game winner and broke South Fremantle's hearts that day. So there ain't no shortage of close contests between the two sides in what's going to be very mixed conditions on the weekend.
Yeah, a bit of rain perhaps on Saturday, so that will also make it quite challenging. And the ground at Revo Fitness can get a little bit heavy as well with a bit of water around. So again, that'll add to the contested nature of the game. And it's the traditional NAIDOC game between these two clubs, the Jimmy Melbourne Cup that they always play for. And so many unbelievably good Indigenous players have represented Claremont and South Fremantle over the years. So,
Michael Mitchell and Stephen Michael are the two that stand out the most to me.
There's a massive list from the two clubs, and that's why they've matched up over the years. So I'm sure we'll probably see plenty of them down at the game as well, which is always good to see. And look, I think this is going to be a game again. It's always one in the midfield at any level these days, but in particular this one. So I think it's going to be a massive clash.
If the conditions get bad, if it's a wet weather game, I reckon Claremont could be most suited. You saw what they did against East Perth in the wet at Sullivan Logistics Stadium, grinded it out to win by 9 points. If the conditions are bad and the ground's a little bit heavy, it can still suit Claremont. That'll take South Fremantle off their fast attacking game, is what they're usually known for. Claremont, as you said on Tuesday, they're a more contested brand. They've got Bolton and Eastland, getting a lot of the football and really stopping that fast tempo from any kind of opposition. I reckon they could do the same to South Fremantle if the conditions get bad. Yeah,
they've been very hard at it this year, which is not always the way that Claremont teams play, but certainly their last couple of years under Ash Prescott, they've gone towards this sort of style. It's a pretty reliable sort of style. It keeps you in the games of footy for a long, long time. And I think probably playing the conditions at their ground, Claremont's a fairly small sort of field, and also we've seen with the new buildings around there, it doesn't get a lot of sunlight, so it does get a bit heavy. And I think you'll find a little bit of rain towards the end of this week could add to that as well. So congested sort of game of footy that might suit Claremont,
Isaiah Winder, I reckon he's going to be under the spotlight from the Claremont players because we mentioned when we were recapping the South Freo East Perth game, loves to run like the wind across the wing, take it to the corridor as well, as you saw in that great piece of play, 3 bounces along the wing after taking the ball from half back. If someone can tag him from a Claremont point of view. If someone can apply a good tag on Winder, that will nullify his impact on the game, and the Bulldogs will lose a little bit of that confidence if they don't get that supply from Winder, because he's been one of their more effective midfielders for the Bulldogs this season. If Winder can avoid a potential tag and bring the likes of Schloith, Bletchenden into the contest, that will provide the world of good for South Fremantle, and their forwards like Strom, who kicked 3 the other last week, the world of good as well.
Yeah, he's a definite line breaker, Isaiah, and very exciting footballer to be watching from the sidelines. So, Claremont will be hoping that he's not too exciting on the weekend, and they'll be watching him pretty closely. Whether they go with the actual tag or not, I'm not sure, but there's definitely someone who's responsible for him around stoppages, and sometimes he likes to drop back into defence and launch his runs from there as well. So, he's one player that can break up that congestion and could be a match winner for South.
Tough game to pick this one. Who wins?
I'll lean just towards Claremont at home, and they're in good touch. South, I think, will be really keen to respond. They were disappointing for 3 quarters against East Perth and very slow to start, and they absolutely copped it at the first break from their coach as well. So you can look for them to make a hot start this week, and Claremont have got to be on their game here to go with them, but I'll go with the Tigers.
I'm going the Tigers as well. I reckon they can sense the urgency as well. They're building on this. They've had top 5 wins in the last 3 weeks. Can they get another one here? If they can, they will be playing finals. I mean, they have been magnificent over the last month after a poor start to the season. Should be a ripper, this one. You can see it live on Channel 7 from 2 o'clock. It is Claremont, South Fremantle at Revo Fitness Stadium. And so would this game. Co-tenant showdown, as we always like to say these days in the media. Subiaco and East Perth at 2:30 at Sullivan Logistics Stadium at Leederville on the AFL app. Subiaco, a win for them, and that'll boost their chances of making the finals this year. East Perth a win, and top spot could still be a good prospect, but this one's going to be a great game.
Yeah, Nobby, is a pretty good contest between these two clubs. Subi with a nice win last week against Peel, and another chance at a team at the top of the table. So a big challenge for Subiaco. East Perth have been in reasonable touch, had a couple of close losses against Claremont and Swans before their tight win against South Fremantle. I think they might be favoured in this one. I think that their best is better than what Subiaco's been able to produce. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if the Lions can nullify East Perth like they did against Peel.
Yeah, especially with the midfield, starting to really get on a good burst after a couple of poor losses. Claremont and Swan districts, as you mentioned. I mean, you talk about Mitch Crowden, good inside midfielder, good gather and run and carry from the centre, but also that back line, that really needs to fire as well. I reckon they're going to be under the spotlight, because if you've got the likes of Sokol and Mayo complementing each other in that forward line and providing some good scoring spread, they're going to have a tough task. So that back line for me is going to be under the most pressure.
Yeah, the East Perth backline's held up pretty well during the season, so we'll wait and see what they can do this week. Selection's always interesting. Angus Scott hasn't played for quite some time. I'm hearing he's getting closer to a return, which he's the line breaker for them on a wing, and it uses the ball really well. And there won't be Hamish Brayshaw. He's out for another couple of weeks. So
nor Harrison McCready as well. And
McCready's one missing from that backline, as you say. So their backline held up really well last week against South Fremantle, and I think they might be able to hold Subiaco's forwards, but probably comes from the pressure in the midfield to make sure that ball use going forward isn't clean, and that way Sokol and Mayo aren't getting an easy look at the footy when it's coming forward to them.
The ruck and the on ball is going to be the question for Subiaco, because Subiaco don't have that X-factor ruckman. Obviously Zach Clark having retired at the end of last season, and they've got Scotty Jones in there, who's been absolutely tearing it up since his return from a broken leg last year. So I reckon Subiaco are going to have it difficult in the centre clearances if they don't have that X-factor in the ruck.
Yeah, and Scott Jones, 100th game last week, which was a fantastic effort from him. So, no, look, he's a key player. He's a bit like Ollie Eastland at Claremont. He sets up so much, gets the ball moving in their direction, and some of his ruck work in the first quarter last week against South Fremantle's midfield really did allow the Royals to get some nice easy exits out of the centre bounce. So they'll be looking to do the same against Subiaco. Bo Wardman will be well prepared, though. He's a good tactical coach. Absolutely. And he'll have some plans in place.
Well, I think one of those plans is really to play that congested, contested game. Stoppage heavy, play a stoppage heavy game, force East Perth to change things up a little bit. And that's something that they're not used to. They like to play a fast flowing game and kick some big scores. East Perth, I reckon they could be taken off guard here, but they'll rise up to the challenge. You say Bo Wardman, very tactical coach, absolutely. I reckon Ross McQueen might trump him this week.
Yeah, he's a good coach, Ross, and a very easy guy to have a chat with as well, which is always good to see. But now, look, it'll be interesting to see. East Perth have certainly changed their game style up a little bit this year. Last year, they were very precise, liked to maintain possession with a bit of kick mark. And when it was working well, it worked beautifully. And then towards the end of the season, things didn't quite go to plan, and they end up exiting in the first week of the final. So they've probably changed their game style a little bit. And but at their best, as we saw probably for the first couple of quarters against South Fremantle, they returned more to that game style and were very precise with the way they're using the footy. And that's where someone like if Angus Scott comes back in, he's one of those players that can use it nicely. Stan Wright off half-back does as well. So a couple of good users of the footy can really break up any sort of plan that the opposition have got.
With all this in mind, who wins at Sullivan on Saturday?
I think the Royals. The Royals will get another victory and push closer to the top of the table. So I'm sure Subiaco will stick with them for most of the game, but East Perth will be too good.
It'll be a close contest, I reckon. We'll make no mistake about that. I'll say East Perth as well, but only by a couple of goals. I reckon it won't be a one-sider, as some may suggest, but it'll be a beauty. Subiaco and East Perth at Leederville on Saturday. And then this one could be a little bit of a danger. It is Perth and East Fremantle. Now, Perth on the rebound following a great win against West Perth. East Fremantle, they're stuttering a little bit. Their premiership hopes in a bit of tatters here. Mineral Resources Park in Lathlane, it's a must-win for East Fremantle, but I reckon they won't have it easy.
No, it certainly is must-win. The Sharks, they just haven't got their season started just yet. They've been playing some good footy at times. Pretty rare to put 4 good quarters together for the Sharks so far this year, and we know that Perth were able to do that last week against West Perth. So the challenge is well and truly right in front of East Fremantle here. They need to get themselves some momentum going towards the back half of the season so that they can be a challenger when it gets to finals time.
And there was a couple of questions earlier in the week from a Perth point of view. Will Josh Edwards play because of the issues with his ribs? I reckon he will. He did get taken from the ground at the hands of the trainers, but he was able to walk on his own accord, and it looks like he could play against East Fremantle, which will be a massive boost for the Demons.
Yeah, it will, and their midfield's starting to come together. They've got some players coming back into their lineup last week, and it makes a huge difference to get those AFL recruits into their team. And Charlie Constable, Simpson, guys like that have been able to really give Perth something when they've been out on the field. Unfortunately, haven't been out there as much as the D's would have liked, but starting to get something like their best team back together, Perth, which will really give them some sort of confidence up against the East Fremantle side.
And Jack Avery off the half-back line as well. I mean, he played his first game of the season on Saturday after suffering a broken foot in the pre-season, and he really shut down that West Perth forward 6 quite incredibly. Good intercept marker, can get run and carry, initiated from half-back through the corridor, so he could be a big key against what is a usually potent East Fremantle forward line.
Yeah, he gets all of the footy for a defender. Likes to get involved on the way back out of defence as well. So, he'll have a big job, I'm sure, on one of those East Fremantle forwards, and then the rebound sort of starts with him, or he certainly gets involved in it as well. So, look for him and Jacob Canelio and players like that to really look to launch off half-back for the Ds.
Also, with Matty Jupp out for a month due to concussion, Cameron Erdley has to shoulder the heavy workload down back, or if he shifts up to the midfield, where's the workload going to be put onto that East Fremantle back 6? That's where I'm worried as well, because if you lose one pillar of your back 6 and you shift another pillar into that midfield, who's going to carry the workload in defence when you get some repeated inside 50 entries against you? That's going to spell a problem, I reckon, for East Fremantle, but they do have the likes of Marlon and Murphy in the wings waiting to get a call up.
Yeah, they've got some depth, and that they're going to need it. Matthew Jupp's a massive out for them, and they haven't played a lot of footy without him for quite some time. So that will be an interesting watch to see just how they do respond without their leader out there, and he's such a reliable player down there in defence. So, there's some challenges there for East Fremantle, but they are a pretty versatile team. So I'm sure that there'll be some plans in place there to cover Matthew Jupp, and then let's see what they've got.
Also, Constable versus Murdoch, I reckon that's going to be the marquee matchup of this game. It could be one to watch on Saturday.
Yeah, Milan Murdoch's been in excellent form. Didn't have his best game last week, but prior to that has been in great touch. And he was one that everyone was looking at the mid-season draft as to whether he might end up in the AFL competition. It didn't go his way, but he's been an absolute star in the WAFL competition for a long time, and I reckon he'll be pretty keen to bounce back this week.
Who wins?
East Fremantle, I think, will win. I think Perth had their day last week. It'll be great to see if they can put a couple of good weeks together, but I think the Sharks, they know they've got to get started now. They're sitting outside the 5. There's not a lot of time left in the season. It'll fly by pretty quick, so they can't afford to drop a game like this.
I'm sensing an upset. I'm going with the Demons. I'm going the other way. I just feel that East Fremantle, that loss to Claremont would certainly deflate them. They're now
you're
outside
still scarred,
the 5.
aren't you, as a Falcons fan?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But in all seriousness, I reckon with Perth getting those 3 players back, Constable, Avery, and Simpson, that depth is starting to gel together. We saw that tremendously against West Perth on Saturday, and I reckon that spells a little bit more confidence in the midfield, as well as Peter German. Needs to get a good midfield setup going, in the team balance, which was also a continuous issue in the 2024 season so far. I reckon they've got that spot on now with that win over West Perth, with those 3 guns returning, and with Jack Avery off the half-back line, shutting down that forward. could be a vital asset for Perth in this game. So I'm going with the Demons, but it's only going to be by a kick. I reckon it might be a close one there.
Well, let's hope it is a close one. Two teams that, they've had a few interesting matchups over the years. I'll stick with East Fremantle.
Well, they did meet in a close one in round 8 as well. Sam Stubbs kicked 5 the last time they met and almost won the Demons the game. So East Fremantle can't afford to be complacent against this Demons side, but it will be very interesting.
No, absolutely. And we've seen just how close this competition is. Doesn't matter where you are placed on the ladder, you can't afford to take your foot off for a moment at all because it'll come back to bite you.
Absolutely. Perth and East Fremantle on Saturday at Mineral Resources Park. And then the final game of round 14, West Perth and Swan Districts at Pentanet Stadium in Joondalup. Swan Districts looking for 6 wins in a row.
Been an outstanding form, Swans, haven't
Oh,
they?
yeah.
It's probably the story of the season so far, and it's a great place to be down there at Bassendean when they're up and about because there's plenty of fans over in the can bar and plenty on the members' side as well. And the
19th man.
They get very well supported out there, and there's a bit of momentum building with the black and whites, and they're going to be hard to stop at the moment.
Oh, by gee, it's going to be an absolutely ripper game over there at Pentanet Stadium. And imagine if they can keep on winning. That atmosphere in a final at Steel Blue Oval is going to be as rowdy as anything. And of course, West Perth, you could put a line through them. Their finals chances are gone, but they want to prove something that their young brigade in particular can be a big building step for the Falcons in the future. You know, especially Connor West, who played his 50th game. You also have a couple of other young players that are really stepping up to the task. So I'm going to be watching out for the young brigade of West Perth sides, of West Perth players rather, in that side this week. Brock Carter in particular, 36 hitouts in the ruck, but got beaten by Schlensog when Edwards came off.
Yeah, so I think West Perth are in that sort of transition mode at the moment. Change over a coach at the start of the year, a number of experienced players getting close to the end of their career as well. So they'll be looking to groom some of these young players and see whether they can get a little bit more out of them. And it's a season where they've taken a bit of a step back, having been so successful over the last period. So time for them to find out what's on their list and I guess identify any areas that they need to look to recruit or really invest heavily in as they go forward into next year.
They need to find a more flexible forward line as well. I mean, Keitel and Knott have been relied upon so many times. And if they're not firing, who's going to be that swing man up forward? It's been Noah Pecoraro in recent times. He had 3 goals a couple of weeks ago, but was held to just 1 as well. So he's been a bit up and down when going towards that forward line. I reckon he could shift up to that forward 50 and add a little bit more tall timber.
Yeah, well, he's missed a lot of footy, hasn't he? So hopefully he's getting himself back into some sort of form and fitness as well. It was looking quite good, that forward line with Jasper Scaife up there, but no longer. So it's one of the challenges in the WAFL competition when some players exit midway through the season. Tyler Keitel's been so reliable and again kicked some goals last week. So he's
6 goals.
Yeah, he's one that they know that they can always kick the footy too and then get the smalls around. And Keegan Knott's been one who's feasted off that as well. Probably hasn't had his best season just yet, but we know how dangerous he can be. So, yeah, I think you're right. There's certainly Keitel's someone they'll continue to rely on for as long as he's there, but the development of some other players is what's needed too.
But also the goal-kicking mids as well. Where are you going to find your goal-kicking mids in this game? Swan Districts got a lot more of that. I said this a couple of weeks ago when Swan Districts were set to take on East Perth. I went with Swans in that game because they had a more flexible forward line. When you talk about, McCready being out, Tedesco being a bit up and down in form. So I think the flexible forward line that the Swans have got and their scoring spread makes a huge difference in games like this. You have the likes of Thomas Edwards, McLaughlin, Glass McCasker, Aidan Clark who can shift up forward for a stint and deliver in front of goal. So I think that's what's really been a strong tale for the Swans, their flexibility inside 50.
Yeah, all over the field. They're such a versatile sort of a team. So Tom Edwards has been in excellent form. So he's an exciting footballer. I think for the last few years we've been looking for Mark of the Week from him pretty much every week of the season. Now he's starting to kick some goals too, which is excellent to see. And they've got so many that can go forward and kick a bag. So they're a really dangerous side. As we say, their form's been excellent. They've knocked off a few of the top teams. I guess this is a little watch for them, isn't it? They're playing one of the teams outside the 5. Can they maintain it? They perhaps dropped off a fraction against the Eagles last week. They can't afford to do that against West Perth. They'll be definitely fired up to respond after the last game.
They've got a complete balance, haven't they, do Swan Districts? I mean, I think when you compare Swan Districts to the likes of Peel Thunder, East Perth and South Fremantle, they're a more flexible side. I mean, they've got so many great options and they can cover for a lot of them. Peel Thunder and East Perth and South Fremantle have a tendency to struggle when they lose either a couple of key players from injury or down on form. Swan Districts, I don't think, have that burden. I've watched this side a couple of times and, they just seem to fire on every cylinder through every option that's available there. If one of them's down on form, they back each other up tremendously from deep in defence right through to the forward line.
Yeah, look, they've built a really good team over the last couple of years.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They weren't far off it last year, had a number of close losses, so it could have easily been a slightly different season for them last year. But this year, those close games have started to go their way. And as we say, they've been able to beat some of the top teams. So they've put themselves right up there. They're fourth on the table, equal with South Fremantle in third place, just percentage out of that position. So they can't afford to drop off this game at all, because there's a top 3 berth available for them if they can really continue this run that they're on.
With that in mind, who does take the points at Joondalup on Saturday?
I think Swans. I think Swans' form is too good to ignore. I do expect West Perth to come out hard. They're a really proud footy club, and they don't play too many bad games in a row. We were stunned, I think, earlier in the year when Peel tore them apart. It was the first time West Perth have had such a heavy defeat in a long, long time, and then dropping one to Perth last week is also something that doesn't happen too often at all, certainly not at Lathlane. I think it was 20 years in a row that West Perth were able to maintain an unbeaten record there. So I do expect this one to be a tough one for Swans. It won't go all their way, and I think that they'll end up winning, but it'll be pretty close.
I expect West Perth to be a lot better than what they were against Perth, but I still think Swans will take the points, about 3 goals in it, but Swans will get their 6th win in a row and continue to threat for the double chance. It is great to see the Swans, fighting for a big finals position after a couple of difficult years, of course, with Andrew Prune now coming into the side. He's instilled a lot of confidence in that playing group, and that playing group's just following suit. I mean, the move to get Andrew Prune as coach, I reckon, was a very good move for the long term. Get that balance of players in. Okay, they lost a couple of close games, but look what he's done with the side this year. What a charge up the ladder.
Yeah, I think it was probably a bit of a surprise to people outside of the Swans Footy Club when he was named. There was a few people, I guess, asking who he was, but he's someone who's come through the club, and look, I think the results are starting to show that it's been a great choice, and that the players seem to be playing for him, which is always a great sign.
Swans looking for 6 in a row, but can the Falcons break that run? Well, you'll find out on Saturday at Pensionet Stadium in Joondalup.
Punt from 50, win. Little too into the game, win. Too cocky, almost a win. Risking it all for the glory, win. It's win-win at the WAFL. Great footy, food and entertainment. Find out more at wafl.com.au.
Well, that's not all the action we've got in store for you this weekend. This Sunday, this is it. The big dance, the WAFLW Grand Final at Pensionet Stadium in Joondalup. And for the 3rd straight year, it is Claremont and East Fremantle, the 2 best in the competition. I mean, there's no doubt about that. We were always looking for Claremont and East Fremantle to really threaten at the top of the competition, and they did that. East Fremantle finishing on top, Claremont in 2nd, and they meet again. And how good is this as well? Both sides have won 1 flag apiece. It's their 3rd grand final. It's almost like a best of 3 World Series or something, isn't it? But this is going to be a hell of a game on Sunday, but the weather is a great leveler. It's going to be wet over there.
Yeah, well, the forecast is for quite a lot of rain on Sunday. Let's hope that doesn't come. But, look, it's fantastic to see the 2 clubs back in it again. It would have been nice to change it up and throw a different club into the mix, but they've been the best 2 teams for a long, long time. And this year it's been East Fremantle's turn to sit at the top of the table. They've won 12 in a row. Their only defeat came at the hands of Claremont the first time the 2 teams met, but they avenged that one the second time around, and then a really close second semi-final. It was less than a kick in the end that the Sharks won by. So, yeah, look, they're 2 really well-matched teams, and even though East Fremantle have had the advantage over the course of the season, there's no reason why Claremont couldn't get the job done on Sunday.
No, I think there's no guarantee for a winner in this one because, a grand final, obviously, it's a very different kettle of fish, and both sides are going to bring stacked lineups to the table. I mean, you look at Jamie Harkin, Kobe Nichols, Eva Campo for Claremont, Zippy Fish, Sharon Wong, Ashley Gomes, and also Tyre Chambers down back as well. So much depth for both sides, it's hard to pick a winner.
It is, and as we say, they've been so evenly matched over a number of years. It's the 3rd grand final in a row, but there's been a number of close games along the way in the matchups during the seasons as well. So I think it's 3 wins and 3 losses each across the last 7, plus a draw in there as well.
That's right.
So there's been some really tight games of footy, and again, the weather will make sure this one stays pretty tight as well. So the midfield battle's always crucial. Juliet Kelly's one who's really stepped up for Claremont lately. Such a talented footballer. She's also a national rower as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Such a great sports person. East Fremantle with Zippy Fish dashing out of the midfield will be exciting, but there's so many others out there as well. And they've got a really versatile sort of team as well. There's a lot of players that can be thrown into different positions.
Julia Kelly had over 20 disposals in her last couple of games, including that preliminary final win over West Perth. So I reckon she's one that's really stepped up at the right time. She's got great ball carrying skills. She's got good leg speed as well, running through the midfield and a little bit down back as well. So I reckon she's going to be one to watch, maybe one that flies underneath the radar in the grand final on Sunday.
Well, I think East Fremantle will know who she is now because she's been in great form, and I think she's one of those extra midfielders that the Tigers have added in there this year. They've got Kate Orme out on a wing who can be damaging. She'll probably match up against Ashley Gomes, which will be a great contest. A couple of really experienced footballers that have both been on AFL lists as well. East Fremantle have got a really strong defence. It's been the best in the competition this season. You know, the likes of Entwistle down there as well as Chambers. Tiani Teakle's dropped back into defence lately as well. She can be swung forward if required too. So really strong defence for East Fremantle. But Claremont likewise with Claire Ortlip down there. She's the marshal. She controls everything.
Absolutely.
And such experience down there. So yeah, look, I think it'll be low scoring. I think it was going to be low scoring anyway, but the weather's going to make that even harder for the forwards to kick a clear score. I'm a bit concerned for Claremont. I think Eva O'Donnell injured her ankle last week. She's been in outstanding form. Saw her on crutches at the end of the game, so
Correct.
I doubt that she's going to be available. Let's hope that she can get up because she's a bit of an X factor in that forward 50 for the Tigers.
It's always the worst thing to miss a grand final with a week to go before injury. That's always going to be a massive heartbreaker. We hope O'Donnell's okay and can take her place in the grand final side for this Sunday, but also in the ruck as well. I think East Fremantle, compared to Claremont in the ruck, they've got a little bit more potency. Laura Catherine and Emily Fiedler in the ruck, they combined for 58 hitouts in the second semi-final a couple of weeks ago. And if they're able to play good tandem in the ruck, cover each other well in that stoppage, and also provide some good opportunity for their midfielders to get centre clearances, I reckon that might be such a key for East Fremantle that could go a long way to them winning.
Yeah, well, Laura Catherine's last two grand finals have been unbelievable. She's had, I think, 50 hitouts in one of the grand finals, kicked 3 goals in another one. So she certainly is no stranger to the grand final day and always performs well there. The rucks don't always have a massive say in WAFLW, not quite as much as perhaps in the WAFL or the AFL, but certainly it's going to give East Fremantle probably first use. And if they can connect with someone like a Zippy Fish who's got that dash to go charging out the front of the centre square, that can certainly set things up for East Fremantle. But perhaps again with the wet weather, there'll be a lot of stoppages. I think there will be anyway. The two teams like to have a lot of numbers around the footy and close it down. So the rucks will be busy, that's for sure.
I'm going to put you in the hot seat, Dave. Who wins this one? It's a tough game, third consecutive grand final, but who takes it out?
I think East Fremantle. I think they've been the best team for the season. It's a different setup to the last couple of years where one team's been totally dominant and the underdogs almost had a free crack and the pressure's all been on the top team. This year it's a little bit more even. But I think East Fremantle probably just have a little bit too much across the field. The start's going to be important because I think both teams are able to shut a game down once they have a lead. So I think it's going to be a real grind. The weather's going to make sure of that as well. But I think if a team can get a lead in the first half, I think look for it to be really low scoring in the second half because I think the team in front's going to really shut the game down well, and I think that's probably where East Fremantle might have the edge. Yeah,
I think so as well. It's going to get physical. I think East Fremantle have got the players to really shut any opposition team down. They've done that for much of the season. They'll do the same against Claremont. So we've both gone with East Fremantle. The best of luck to East Fremantle and Claremont in the WAFLW Grand Final on Sunday. 2:05 is when the game starts on Sunday afternoon. You can catch it on Channel 7 live right throughout Western Australia and all around the nation on 7 Plus as well. It's going to be a real absorbing contest. We can't wait for it. Dave, really appreciate your contributions this week. Great job as always, and look forward to your call this weekend. Should be a couple of cracking games of football.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. Thanks for having us.
All the best to all our listeners and viewers as well. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll have a recap of round 14 and the WAFLW Grand Final in the next week on Around the WAFL. You can catch us on our socials, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and you can get us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next week.